Hi guys, how are you? Today I have a very good topic, and this is about the education system in Africa. So I would like to hear your comments on what are my arguments, and should we change the current education system to reflect the African realities, or should we continue with the current education which we have? So welcome everyone to this episode of African education system, or which I can call post-colonial education system, and whether the education system fits the current realities of Africa, or should we change so that we can be able to develop, or can we develop as Africa as a continent while we still using the education system which is there. So for those who do not know me, I'm also a book writer. I've been able to write 10 books so far. Each year I publish 2 to 3 books. So one of the books which I published this year was what is called Imperialism 2.0 or 2.0, as you can see here. So that is the book Imperialism 2.0, Why Africa? And in that book I talked more about why is it difficult for African countries to be able to develop. How is it difficult for them to be able to compete with the counterparts like US and the European countries. So in the book, I talked more about, one among other topic areas I talked about is education system. So first of all, I started with a quotation from Mandela, which we all know and agree that Mandela says, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Yes, we know that, but the current system, the education we are teaching students, is it going to help Africans to change the world? Is it going to help Africans to develop and solve their own problems? So let's have this kind of discussion, and I would like to hear your opinion, and I will share my opinion, which some of these, not all, I put on my book. So in order to make my arguments, it's very simple. What I usually tell people, and in the first page or the first chapter of my book, is talking about what I call colonial template. Colonial template, or the blueprint which colonial masters left, is what we call when the capitalist colonial masters decided to leave African countries. They didn't just decide to leave because they love you, Africa. No. The environmental, economic, political, all the situation forced them to leave. And don't bring me the stories about certain chief in Africa fought Germans, certain chief in Africa fought Italians and beat Italians. I understand that, but that's not the reason. The reason was a pure economic and typical capitalist reasons. It's just like you say slave trade was abolished because of humanitarian. No way. Those are just like excuse people are having. What made slave trade to be stopped was pure economic. Industrialization has to take out the slaves to replace. Just like the invention of computer and internet, how it's taking jobs of people, the same way. So when we started with the stages of capitalism, there was what we call mercantile capitalism or mercantilism. So that is stage when they discovered something, they went to industrial. Industrial, it went to imperialism. So imperialism forced them to have area of occupation. But it reaches a point where capitalists didn't get what they wanted in terms of profit, having colonies, especially when it is around the 1950s, 1940s, 50s, going 60s. Many countries, they start to wage war, they want independence and other things. Capitalists, they started to think about different ways on how they can continue getting raw materials, manufactured goods, so and having market for their manufactured goods, and everything they want to get without having any hassle, like they have to colonize you. So colonialism continues to be there, but the form has to change. So when they left colonial masters, they left what we call a blueprint, that colonial post-independent African countries, when they left certain systems which continue to favor them. One of that system is colonial education. So they put the structure of education, the topics they're supposed to be more European topics. They have to be more theoretical. They have to be pyramidal in structure. Getting few people who can be able to be the cracks, can be able to help them into the administrative. So everything is left there. Up to now, the question to ask yourself, is the education changed after colonial systems? So I have few quotations from some other people. One of the quotations says like this way, I'm going to read. One of the greatest mistakes of the education in the part of the education in the part has been this one, that it has taught the African to become a European instead of remaining African. That is very important. And that was still the colonial education, and the current education, that is the same. This is entirely wrong, and the government recognizes it. In future, our education will remain at making African remain an African and taking interest in his own country. And that is from Sir Gordon, who was the governor of Ghana or Gold Coast by then. So, this person in 1920 made this comment, which is true up to today, that our education system is more European, to make us European. Still, someone in Tanzania, someone in Kenya, someone in Uganda is studying Bachelor of Banking and Finance, whatever, is studying more about, let's say, Visa card, MasterCard, how they operate, but they don't study about how M-Pesa, Tigo Pesa, MTN, Orange Money, how those mobile money payment systems operate in their own countries of Africa, which is very sad. Another thing says this way. Someone put it this way. Over the years, as I went through college and university, I felt increasingly that the education I received taught me more and more about Europe and less about my own society. That is Dr. Kofi Busia, Prime Minister of Ghana in 1969 to 1972. This Prime Minister said the education was receiving taught him to be more European and less being African. I remember while I was studying from secondary school, primary school, you were studying about the first person to discover Lake Victoria, and you were mentioning the name of a white person. Really? There are no people in Lake Victoria who were there? The first person to discover Mount Kilimanjaro, how did they discover? While there are people who lived there. So those are the education. You are studying about the timber production in Quebec or wherever in Canada. You don't study the timber production in your own country. You are studying more about the Great Lakes in America, but you don't study the great rivers and lakes in Africa and how they can be used to produce. I remember we used to draw the map of China, studying about Yangtze-Kiang, whatever, all those crazy rivers, but we didn't study about Malagarasi, Nile in detail, and see how they can be potential to change the course of Africa. Another person is saying this way. Each year, thousands of young Africans graduate from colleges and universities, and still some find themselves unemployed or underemployed. Yet most parents still dream of their education, of their children obtaining quality education, and often they sacrifice their wealth in the pursuit of this goal. Something is going wrong in our education systems and the outcomes of this education. Our African economies have tremendous growth potential, and many African countries are reporting positive economic growth, which is very, very good and is continuing. However, the new graduates are having difficulty in finding purpose and meaning to their degrees in these economies, obviously because they are theoretical and European based. Many of African economies are primarily agricultural based. However, we find more graduates in all other fields than agriculture related to skills and training. How is it that we can have such agrarian mismatch? Why do we continue to perpetuate the colonial system where it seems less than 20% of students who enter grade 1 will make it to the institution of higher education? The education in Africa is more about all parents. My child has to go to study law, has to study sociology, political science, public administration, public health, which all are good. But what is the economy of Africa? 75 to 80% of all countries in south of the Sahara region, they live in the rural area. The economy depends on agriculture. So if the economy depends on agriculture, why we don't have agricultural universities, agricultural colleges? Tanzania, out of 27 universities, there is one called university, which provides agriculture degrees, which more are theoretical still, but okay. Kenya, 24 big universities, 4, but mostly are constituent, they provide the agriculture. So many universities and colleges don't emphasize more about agriculture or animal keeping, bees, fishing. They don't have those one. But rather, we go more about sociology. You cannot change the economy of your country by studying political science. No. Or sociology. No. I will explain why. So, the reason is very simple. Education system has to be practical, African-centered, and more importantly, has to base number one on agriculture, has to base on industrialization. Because when you have education, these all ministries have to sit together. Ministry of Education, you say, okay, we are teaching science and technology, we are teaching agriculture. You need to have industries, you need to have science and technology, you have to bring hydroelectric power, you have to bring irrigation system, you have to bring artificial rain. So all the things have to go together with the people who are studying agriculture and not waiting for the rain. Not focusing everybody is going to study sociology. For what? Those are the things we have to do. The colonial education system was created for the new settler governments. The few Africans who became educated in these systems were primarily to aid white settlers, which is why most became clerks and so forth in supporting the roles. Yet, we still use the same education system that oppressed us to educate free people. We haven't changed that. Everybody is fighting to speak perfect English, taking to your kids to the best English medium school so that they can have good English, to think that is the best school or education system. Nowadays, we change, like the kids from primary school, they start so much homework. Kids will take them to boarding school at the age of 5, age of 7, so that they can get better education. But we do not know how we are going to destroy that system. We are focusing about how they can speak good English. We are focusing more how they can get good grades, but we forget that it's not about grades. Do they have skills? So someone is graduating from the university, staying 3 years, doesn't have a job. Education they have, Bachelor of Accounting, cannot go to do simple bookkeeping, helping other people to solve problems. Someone is studying marketing, but if you tell someone, go take this book and sell it over there, they cannot do that. Someone is having a degree in political science, but they cannot find the ways on how they can use the degree in a practical point of view. We are more theoretical. We are studying more about European systems, the same way as the scam we did during the what we call colonial education. We have to change it. I can give you another simple example. We know for sure about tourism. Let me give you the example. Tanzania is the only country on the planet Earth with the frogs. Those frogs are the only frogs in this world which they breastfeed. All frogs, they don't breastfeed, but the frogs in area in Tanzania, Kihansi, they can breastfeed. But we know that. But if I tell you, ask me, where is the video you have seen that frog is breastfeeding right away, or pictures? We don't teach that in school. We just hear those. We need to teach those. We need to show the videos. We need to go practical. and how we can compete. We need to go to the current situation. Teachers who are teaching marketing, they have to teach social media. How you can market things using Instagram, Facebook, not the old billboard, whatever. World has changed. We have to change everything. Professors have to write books which solve the practical problems, not writing the books just because to get promotion. Like I said, we have seen how M-Pesa, how Tigo Pesa, how the mobile payment systems in Africa is generating billions of money. It's changing the business, the way we do transaction. It is mobile payment system in Africa is way sophisticated, more than this Apple Pay or other this whatever Visa card, MasterCard. But how many books do we see? I have never seen any book professor is writing a book about that. Those are the things we have to teach people at school. Those who did the marketing, who did the accounting, go and teach those one. So there are things we have to change. And not focusing about all these A's. Yes, we need good grades, but they have to deal with the realities. We studied in history, for instance. All the history in high school, you are focusing everything about Europe. Even if we want to talk about Africa, we are talking about the effect of First World War in Africa. Is that study about everything we study about Africa is a problem or something? Like, why can't we study things which really happen in Africa and how we can use these things to change them? You come in America here, people are studying about the American Civil War. They talk about how the heroes did these things. They don't talk much about how British come to colonize. Everything is just how other people, they came to be as a victim. We don't teach as a victim. Let's teach the realities. Let's control the narratives. That's how we can be able to compete in this world. If you are teaching about how to do business, how to do small scale, like here in the US, they have, or in Europe, they have specific schools like community college, they teach you practical. And people are hired. People are basing more on small business. That is the new world. How can you make environment conducive for people who are graduating, not to focus more about employment? Someone is waiting for 2-3 years to get employed. How are you going to put some people to be having their own system to employ themselves? Small business, ownership, and not typical theoretical than practical. What do you think can be done? What things in education system should be changed? Should we focus more about the same pyramidal structure, the same colonial, talking more about the history of Europe, talking about the geography of Europe, talking about I remember we were talking about the subject in primary school, the big farms, we were talking about maize or corn in America, this coffee in Brazil. Do you tell me that we don't have a lot of coffee in Uganda? Or in Kenya, you cannot study tea? We are studying about Sri Lanka, we are talking about Canada, we are talking about US, we are talking about these small countries. Like, really? Is that really we can do that? I don't know. If you ask the kids now, in many countries in Africa, about even Ngorongoro, the crater, Kilimanjaro, they do not know, but they can tell you anything about these western areas. But ask here someone even, do you know Tanzania? Do you know Kenya? So what is that? They do not know even somewhere about Africa because they control their own narratives, practical to their own situation. Yes, you have to understand the world, but you don't need to be like dominated by the world. Control the narrative and how you can control the world. Let me end up here because there are so many things. We have to talk about education systems. What do you understand? What is your opinion about African education system? Where did we do wrong? And how can we change our narratives? How can we change the system so that we can be competitive, not waiting for employment, things of that nature, so that we can develop? Put in the comment below. Let's have this discussion. And to be in a positive way, not against, like, okay, blah, blah, blah. No, let's be in a positive way on how we can change, how we can improve. and be the best. So thank you everyone, and I really appreciate. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done so. This is Ernest Boniface Makulo EBM. Goodbye everyone.